Iron Pineapple. I played Elden Ring, Nightreign. If you guys don't know, Elden Ring, Nightreign is like an upcoming expansion to Elden Ring. It's like a co-op. I've seen a couple of videos on it. You get some new, like, I would say, mobility mechanics. Like, I don't think there's no fall damage. Like, if you jump from a certain distance, all you'll do is like hit the ground and like parkour roll. And you kind of just are like going, you're just doing a like co-op, like team based missions with each other. Now, I'm not really sold on this because like I don't see how much different that this is from just playing Elden Ring and then summoning your friends to play with you, or just summoning randoms to play with you for the moment to fight a boss or to fight like a group of enemies and then moving on. You know what I mean? So you could literally play Elden Ring right now with your friend, like start to finish. Uh, so I don't really get like if this is going to be if they're going to price this at full price, I really don't see how this can be priced at full price if there really isn't anything different or like new that you're really doing. Like what is the thing that's innovative to this versus just playing the base game and inviting my friends to play it? Which I didn't do that anyway. Like I played the whole game by myself. So all right, let's get into it. This drops like in a couple months too. The expansion drops in a couple months. So
Recently, I got the chance to play Elden Ring Nightreign early at a hands-on preview event hosted in Vegas. In case you missed it, Nightreign is the next game From Software is releasing, and according to them, it's a quote, co-op action survival game. What is it really? It's essentially Elden Ring remixed into an action roguelike for 3 players, where each run sees you fighting
okay,
enemies and
three
collecting
players.
loot in a shrinking Fortnite-esque circle. When the circle fully shrinks, you're forced into a nighttime boss fight. The game has you fighting Elden Ring enemies and bosses, but you'll also encounter bosses from past Dark Souls games occasionally too, like the Nameless King. If you make it to day 3, you get to fight one of the 8 Night Lord final bosses, and winning here equals a successful run. I was unfortunately not allowed to record my own footage at the event, but I was given 17 minutes of B-roll showcasing a good chunk of the experience. Now, I do have a lot of opinions about my time playing the game, but first let's go over all the footage in sequential order, as I think it paints a pretty clear picture of what to expect from the
So
gameplay loop. I'll interject with my
this is
thoughts along
another
the
thing
way, and save some of my
I've seen a lot of I saw like three like content creators or people who are like basically like Elden Ring like fanatics of like the whole lore from software. They have whole pages dedicated to like the pros and cons, this weapon, all that. Why not let them show what they captured? At least like 5 minutes of it. You don't gotta do the whole like playtest capture, but I literally this B roll is the same B roll that I've seen 3 other content creators have. Like this was like a default B roll that they gave everyone to like that doesn't that doesn't give me the greatest confidence in like the replayability or the interest of this game if you're not letting the creator. Now that's not it's not out of the ordinary for that to happen, so it's whatever. But if just let them get like 5 minutes of their own B roll, of their own gameplay and their own experience, so they can talk about that. Because you're not giving them really much to go off of, and if it is bad, we're only going off of what you gave us to show. You know.
bigger opinions and critiques for the end. Each run begins with a short cutscene of your chosen Nightfarers walking toward a cliff before running to catch a lift from a spectral hawk. There will be 8 characters to choose from in the full game, but there are only 4 in the demo, and I'll talk about what each one can do as they appear.
Okay, so we
Next, you're thrust into
choose
the game with an
specific
aerial view of the
characters.
map as you glide down on your hawk, kind of like a Fortnite glider, though you don't have control over where you get to land. The game forces you to drop off in the spot it's chosen near the edge of the map. It's pretty
Mm.
odd that you can't choose where to land or influence the flight of the bird, because I think it'd be pretty fun to have more agency over where to start. But hey, that's
Right.
just me. Also, the text Day 1 pops up on the screen because, you guessed it, it's Day 1. As I already mentioned, the game is split into 3 days, where you explore during the day and fight a boss at night. Each day is somewhere between 10 to 15 minutes long. I didn't time it, but I'm pretty sure it's within that range. Upon landing, you have a few different choices on where to go, but these players chose to go after the nearest enemy camp, something my group often did as well. This also gives us our first look at Wilder, the strength dexterity knight, and his grapple hook ability. As you can see, it pulls small enemies closer, but when used on larger ones, Wilder's launch toward them instead. Each character has one unique ability like this that's on a short cooldown. There's normally a big icon at the bottom of the screen that displays the ability and lets you know when it's available to use. Also, this is pointing out the obvious, but it's worth mentioning. This combat is literally Elden Ring. Like the animations, the enemies you're fighting, this is Elden Ring. Ultimately, this makes Nightreign feel like an ambitious fan mod for Elden Ring as opposed to a standalone product. And I don't mean
Mm-hmm.
that necessarily as a bad thing, but I do feel compelled to point this out because it's pretty core to the experience.
Again, it's not the if it's gonna be an expansion or like a new quote unquote game, have it be a different feel. Like I said, if this is basically Elden Ring with my buddies, and you just all you did was throw in what he said, six builds that we get to choose from, six character builds that we get to choose from. What is the difference? We might as well just go into Elden Ring, build our character like this character, and then summon them and do that. Like, cause you could fight an enemy, you could fight bosses. Literally, if you just go one direction long enough, you will run into bosses. You will run into hordes, camps, freaking dogs, birds, crabs, octopuses, freaking turtles. You would just run into knights. You will run into some shit in regular Elden Ring if you just summon your buddy and just say, "Let's just run straight. Let's just run left. Or let's just run right. Let's just explore this specific cave."
After clearing the camp, the group runs toward the nearest site of grace. This showcases the new super sprint, which is basically the normal sprint at double speed. This is mostly used for traversal because the map is big and Torrent's on vacation. You can also use it during combat, but it's tough to pull off because it'll drain your entire stamina bar almost instantly. Anyway, they run up to the site of grace to replenish their healing flask and level up.
Why don't we get a horse? What is the significance of not giving us Torrent back? Does that make the experience better? Because he didn't say the map was smaller. He said the map is pretty big. So if I guess that would extend the gameplay time. If by you not giving us a horse, it extends the gameplay time. But if we've played Elden Ring and the DLC with a horse, because the map is big, it would literally take us triple the time if we didn't have a horse. And some places we wouldn't even been able to get to without us having a horse. Why not just keep us having a horse? Now, I've seen we have some abilities, like we got like a double jump in this expansion with our new mobility. But as far as like just sprinting, we know how, like he just said, how fast sprinting kills your stamina. Why not give us the horse again?
You start each run with 3 flasks, and each site of grace will refill them all. Sites of Grace are also where you can level up using the runes you acquire from enemies and bosses, just like Elden Ring. However, unlike Elden Ring, there isn't a way to pick and choose stats. Instead, you just click the big level up button, and you'll simply be stronger with extra damage, health, and FP. I'm a little mixed on this, as I think it's a missed opportunity to provide the player with a choice on how to build their character, but it does fit the theme of the game with them wanting to keep things quick and streamlined. So maybe it's for the best. Regardless, leveling up is important as the boost in damage from level 1 to level 2 is quite noticeable. More damage means enemies die faster, and in this game, speed is everything. Next, we see the player attack a group of demi-humans, and they do this by throwing a firebomb. So yes, consumables such as firebombs are a thing in Nightreign, and you begin each run with 4 inventory slots to hold different types of consumables. You can also see that the player broke some glowing crates, which dropped additional consumables for them to pick up. Between your inventory being very limited and finding plenty of extra consumables, you're heavily encouraged to use these whenever you have a chance. After this, the group encounters a golem, and I believe it counts as a mini-boss. Mini-bosses are scattered across the map, and you'll know you're fighting one because a boss health bar will appear at the bottom of the screen. Upon defeat, the mini-boss will drop a purple soul, and this rewards each player with the choice between 3 upgrades, ranging from a new weapon to a permanent passive boost. Examples of the passives I saw were a slight increase to stamina regen, or a slight increase to damage reduction. And to be clear, all 3 players get their own reward from the 1 purple soul.
When Google Fiber launched 1 gig internet, some people said,
"What would you even do with that much speed?"
Then our customers did a whole lot. So we launched 2 gig.
I don't even have to think about it.
And then 5 gig.
I have no worry about the bandwidth.
And
We're testing 20 gig right now.
what you want to do won't slow down, so we'll keep speeding up. Going beyond fast, going beyond fiber. Find out if your address is eligible today at fiber.google.com.
This next clip showcases the new wall climbing mechanic. When you press jump while sprinting toward a wall, your character will automatically run up the wall and then mantle over the ledge. This is sick. It adds an additional layer of verticality to the map, and it can be fun figuring out how to get from point A to point B, since sometimes you'll have to use the wall climb in slightly creative ways. At the top of this church, the player finds some loot on a body and inside a box. Important to note is that all loot you find like this is classified as community loot, meaning that every member of the team can see it, but only one person can take each item. This is also our first look at the different armaments you can find. Each weapon and shield has a built-in Ash of War, and each spellcasting catalyst has 2 different spells. So yes, in this game, the spells you cast are attached directly to the catalyst. Each armament also comes with a built-in passive effect, such as extra damage on combo finishers, additional item discovery, or HP restoration upon attacks. These are mostly small background bonuses, but what's interesting is that each of these passive effects applies to your character even if the armament isn't actively being used. As long as it's equipped, you get the effect. This means that you always want to have 6 armaments equipped, especially because equip load isn't something you need to worry about in this game. You'll always be fast rolling. This is also our first look at blue colored loot. This indicates that it's more rare, and the rarity goes from white to blue to purple to orange. Next, we catch a glimpse of the map screen, and this should give you a better idea of the scope of each run. The map itself is an island, and on the edge, you can see the Fortnite circle closing in. Just like Fortnite, instead of constantly getting smaller, there are intervals where it doesn't move at all. I won't go over all the icons on the map, but basically, these show you where most of the points of interest are, like enemy camps or fortresses. You can then pin on the map where you want to go, which is useful because the other players will be able to see your pin and know where you're going. Also worth noting is that some things are hidden on the map, so it's possible you'll find something good even if it's not marked from the start. Between this and the marked points of interest, you probably won't have time to do everything, so you have to make quick decisions on where to go and what to skip. Next, we see Wilder use his grapple hook to get a little extra speed when running around. It's tough to see here, but
I
this
love the
use
fact that
case
there
is
ain't no
also
damn
relevant
falling
during
damage.
fights. Instead of grappling the boss, it might be worth grappling the ground to reposition. We then see Wilder take on another mini-boss, the Leonine Misbegotten, and he initiates the fight with a big fire explosion. This is Wilder's ultimate ability, so unlike the grapple hook, which is on a short cooldown, it's usually a minute or 2 between uses of the ultimate, and I believe dealing damage increases the speed it fills up. Wilder then lands a critical hit, and this is a good time to point out that some of the weapon animations have been changed.
So alts
the
have a
greatsword moveset,
cooldown
for
instead of just
example,
like you
is a bit
having
different. It feels a little faster and more
the
aggressive,
FP
which
bar,
is well suited for the faster
like your blue
pace of
bar
Nightreign.
like you have in
This
Elden
fight
Ring.
also gives us a look at Wilder's
Now this
unique
has just a
passive ability,
cooldown for you to
something
do
each
your
character has. Once per run,
ultimate.
you can cheat death. The first time you get hit by an attack that would kill you, there's a flash of white followed by a quick dodge. The first time it happened, I thought it was some sort of perfect block, but no, it's Wilder surviving an attack he shouldn't have. Finally, Wilder's group shows up. But oh no, one of his teammates goes down. So in Nightreign, instead of dying immediately, you enter a down state where you can crawl around. Not to keep bringing up Fortnite, but it's like Fortnite. However, unlike Fortnite, to revive your teammate, you actually want to attack them. After dealing enough damage, they pop right back up. The HUD for reviving looks something like this in-game. A ring split into 3 equal sections above your ally's head. This ring represents how much damage you need to deal to bring your friend back. The first time they go down, only one section needs to be depleted, but each subsequent death adds another section, so it gets tougher and tougher to keep reviving. I think this may reset if you don't get down for a while though. You have 15 seconds to get revived, and if your friends fail to get you, you'll lose a level and respawn at the last set of grace you touched. This won't end a run, but it's still a pretty brutal punishment given how important levels are. Next, we have some footage of another Nightfarer, the Guardian. This bird person is the tank of the cast, with the most HP and a more defensive playstyle. Their active ability is a whirlwind that knocks small enemies up and staggers big enemies. They also have a special defensive stance they can enter, which seems to significantly decrease the stamina you lose when blocking attacks. This stance is their unique passive trait though, and not an ability on cooldown, so you can use it whenever you want. Most importantly though, they have a sick-ass dive bomb ultimate that lets them crash down for massive damage. This also showcases one of the best things about the revive mechanic. You can simultaneously hit enemies while reviving your teammates, and the dive bomb is probably the best example of why that's useful. They don't show it here, but if you keep holding down the ultimate button after landing your dive bomb, you remain crouched down with your weapon in the ground, and this provides a defensive buff to yourself and nearby allies for up to 10 seconds if you keep holding it. I also think you're immune to staggers and take heavily reduced damage while holding this stance. The next clip shows off the Fortnite circle. It takes the form of a blue ring of fire. If you find yourself outside the circle, you slowly take damage over time. Believe it or not, as much as everyone, myself included, keeps joking about the Fortnite comparisons, I think the time pressure this circle adds is one of the more compelling parts of the gameplay loop. Basically, it encourages you to play efficiently. You don't just want to clear the camp full of enemies, you want to do it fast. And then it makes the moments in between fights interesting too, because you gotta make quick decisions on where to go and how to get there. This is fun, and pretty distinct from playing Elden Ring. Speaking of how to get places, one way to do that is by making use of slipstreams. These function pretty much identically to Spirit Springs in Elden Ring, and they allow you to super jump into the air. These were fun in Elden Ring, and they're still fun here. And it's cool how you can sometimes use them to reach the top of structures they might not have been intended for. Up ahead, the group finds a Church of America, and if you collect the item inside, it upgrades the maximum usage for Healing Flask by 1. Every church like this will have this upgrade, so you can always plan ahead and stop at 1. Next, the group finds a Scarab to kill. This is an example of one of the...
I wonder how much damage the ring does Is it like 1 HP, 2 HP, 3 HP? Like, does it increase depending on like how the round of how further the round is, or how closer the circle is to the actual center, or is it like is it consistently the same amount of HP that it's draining every time it ticks you?
Many useful things you can find that might not be marked on the map. These guys always drop a talisman you can equip, and these talismans seem to function identically to how they do in Elden Ring. The passive boost they give can sometimes be substantial.
Reborn.
We then have some more.
Another thing I wonder is, can the same character be picked twice or multiple times on the same team? Can one character be picked multiple times on the same team, or does everyone have to be a different character model?
More camp clearing gameplay, though these enemies are tougher than the ones at the start. This clip also gives us a better look at the Guardian's whirlwind move and how it can knock
Get your
enemies
ass up.
One significant change from Elden Ring is how enemies no longer get periods of invincibility when knocked down, and this is especially useful for moves like the whirlwind attack if your teammates follow up. Also, notice how the magic swords of Carrie and Phalanx appear over Wilder's head without him casting a spell. I believe this is an example of a passive upgrade he got from a mini-boss. The way this one works is that every 30 seconds or so, these swords will appear over your head for free damage. Next, we get another grapple shot clip. And yes, it can be used to break the guard of an enemy using a shield. The group then finds an underground passage leading to a treasure room, and this gives us another look at the loot system. Once again, this is community loot, and the players must share. You can also see that there are level requirements attached to weapons. Blue is level 3, purple is level 9, and orange is level 12. Remember, there aren't stat requirements like Elden Ring, and you just have one overall level. If you find a spectral tree, you can summon a spectral hawk to carry you across the map. These follow set paths, and the little floating spirits show you the general direction it'll take you. You can also see the path it'll take you on the map screen.
Yeah, but
What's cool about these spectral hawks, as opposed to the ones at the start of the match, is that you're given a little control in steering them, and when you want to land,
directional
you have more
whirlwind
freedom
into
on
the
where
center
exactly
of
you
the
want to
map.
touch down. This is also our first look at the third character, the Duchess. She's basically the nimble rogue archetype of the group. The players also find a treasure map on a desk in this fort, and this reveals the locations of more points of interest on the map. Also, this location is
great
literally
beginner
Fort
weapon.
Height from Elden Ring, like one-to-one copy-paste. Not every location is like this, but some of them are, and it's incredibly trippy seeing iconic areas like the Gatefront ruins dropped into this remixed version of Limgrave. I'm not too bothered by this, but this is another example of ripping things straight off Elden Ring, and it plays a big role in this feeling like a well-made fan mod as opposed to a standalone game. Next, we get some proper Duchess gameplay and a look at her ability, Restage. This replays the damage an enemy or boss just took over the past 2 seconds, and as you can see, it's especially impactful when it's paired with something like Wilder's ultimate. For only being on a short cooldown, this is easily the strongest ability in the game. It's also a great example of co-op synergy and interactivity that usually isn't present in other FromSoft games. This clip also shows an important change to critical hits. In Elden Ring, bosses and enemies are immune to damage from teammates for the duration of someone landing a critical hit. But in Nightreign, that's no longer a restriction. However, I think bosses might take reduced damage from other hits during this window, so that's not too overpowered. One last thing to note about this clip, the Duchess's passive gives her a unique quick-step Bloodborne dodge that's noticeably faster than the other dodges.
This
She also
clip
gets a
really
cool
didn't
little
show
backflip
her-
if she dodge backwards twice.
Really
Check
didn't
out this
show her
dagger
doing
moveset, by the way.
anything.
This is much different than Elden Ring and way faster.
That
Definitely a
wasn't
fan
the
of this
best
change, and I can vouch
representation
that
of
it
her
feels great to
moves,
use. Next, we get to
of
see the
her
Duchess's
abilities.
ultimate, which applies invisibility to herself and the rest of the group. This is obviously
Oh, that's
useful when
cool.
sneaking up on enemies, but I also found it useful even in the middle of a boss fight, because attacking doesn't seem to break stealth. You can still get hit, but yeah, it has its uses. Finally, we get to see the fourth character, the Recluse, aka the Spellcaster Witch. Big fan of her design, by the way. And I already know this is going to be Zully's main. Like any good spellcaster, the first thing she does is jump off a cliff, and this demonstrates another cool change to Nightreign: no fall damage. The group then approaches an Everjail. To open it up, you'd find a stone sword key and then use it on the nearby
It's called an
stone legs.
Everjail?
This
I
then unlocks the
always
boss
called
fight.
it an
Next, we get a
Evergold.
look at the Recluse's unique ability, Magic Cocktail, and it's probably the coolest ability in the game, but it's weirdly complicated, so buckle up for a long explanation. So when you hit an enemy with a spell, they get marked by the
Another thing I've noticed that
corresponding
they've
element.
changed
The four
is there
elements
is
are
no
magic,
health bar.
fire,
It's like
lightning,
God of
and
War,
fire.
where you're
And in this
just
clip, the
fighting
enemy
them
gets marked with
until,
magic.
you
Then,
know,
when
you get to
use her
that point of,
ability,
oh,
it
yep,
sucks
he's
out the
done now.
elemental mark. In addition to restoring FP, this also fills in one of the 3 circles on the ability icon with the element you just sucked up. You repeat this 2 more times until all 3 circles are filled up, at which point using it a 4th time will expend the elemental icons and cast a special spell. Now here's the crazy part. The Magic Cocktail spell is unique and depends on the combination of elements you absorbed. So like magic, 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 is different than magic fire is different than magic fire lightning. Since there are 4 different elements, this results in 14 different potential spells you can cast baked into just one ability. And you kind of have to remember them because they have different ranges and uses. Hell, some of them don't even deal damage. Fire Holy, for example, creates a healing aura for yourself and nearby teammates. But the fun doesn't end there. Not only can you suck elemental marks out of enemies from the spells you cast, you can also suck them out of elemental damage your teammates deal. For example, here Wilder uses a fire attack on the boss. This applies the fire mark, and the recluse is able to suck the fire right out. And guess what? The damage your teammates take also counts. So if a teammate gets hit by a fire attack, you can lock onto them and suck it out the same way you would for an enemy. So yeah, this kind of kicks ass, and it's super fun seeing a needlessly complex move put into a game like this.
God,
the recluse also has a pretty useful ultimate. It's called Song of the Blood Soul, and it marks all nearby enemies with a blood icon. Hitting a marked enemy will restore HP and FP, and your teammates can hit them too for the same effect. Lastly, the recluse has a unique dodge animation where she floats around. I like how elegant it is, and I feel like it perfectly fits her design.
Jira is now for all teams, especially marketing teams waiting on final engineering updates.
Next up, we see the group running through some mines, and shout out to FromSoft for sending us all this hand-picked footage, yet leaving in a T-posing miner. No hate, genuinely funny that slipped through. Anyway, yeah, you can find mines like this during runs, but when I was playing, I felt like these were too out of the way to be worth it given the time pressure. Plus, I didn't find anything super useful inside. Maybe they'll change though, or maybe I missed something. We then get a look at a camp full of flame chariots. When I was playing with my group, we made the mistake of heading to this camp at the very start. This is not a level 1 area. These guys are tough. If only there was a way to reach the weak spot on the top of their head. Oh wait, you can use the new wall climbing ability to jump up and hit it for free. I wish I was aware of this during my play session, but hey, now we both know. Next, we see the group take on a dragon boss fight. Not much to say here, as we've seen most of this stuff already, but pay attention to the time of day. As it slowly changes to nighttime, that's your cue that you should start wrapping up whatever you're doing, because the circle begins to rapidly shrink at this point. You can see the circle closing in as they finish off the dragon. From here, what you want to do is look for the floating golden tree in the sky, as that's the point where the circle will close in. Eventually, the ring of fire reaches its smallest size, and essentially forms an arena. This is where you'll fight the first major boss. Before the boss fight, a small group of enemies will spawn in. This serves as both a warm-up for the fight and a teaser for which boss you're about to see. In this case, it's a pack of demi-humans, so fittingly, the boss fight is a demi-human queen and a demi-human swordsman. Something I appreciate about Nightreign is that these fights seem specifically designed for multiplayer.
I wonder if, like, if you were doing this run, let's just say like 5 times, you did this run 5 times in like a day or a couple of days span with your buddies, what are the chances that you get a repeated boss once that nighttime hits? You know what I mean? What's the chances if I do a certain amount, let's just say 5 to 10 runs, what's the chances that they've made over let's say 15, 20 variations of bosses when this night hit for like this? How quickly would I like fight this was this ogre demi dog looking thing, whatever he just called this? What's the odds of me fighting this twice in the same like day run or whatever day, the same session, as opposed to fighting something else? If I played this game for multiple hours and we did this like 10 runs, what are the chances, the percentage that I would fight this same boss again?
Seen FromSoft games. In this case,
like how many variations of bosses did they put into this?
Better examples of this. One of those bosses was the centipede demon from Dark Souls 1.
Honestly, that percentage should be 0, because there are so many variations of bosses, mini bosses, mega bosses, actual like bosses in Elden Ring. You know what I mean? Like there's dogs, demons, bats, freaking birds, animals, freaking these, like there's meta-humans, there's knights there. So there's so many like variations of bosses and enemies. I feel like the odds of you fighting the same one in a repeated session should be long down the line. You know what I mean? You should never repeat a session unless you played this shit for like 100 hours. That should be the only time it's like, oh, I fought this boss already. But like if you played this for like a couple hours, or you know what I mean, like a full fucking day session, as many bosses and many variations of enemies that they have put into Elden Ring, the base, and into the Shadow of the Erdtree. And I don't know if the Shadow of the Erdtree boss is coming, but we see that he said that some bosses from Dark Souls have ended up in this game. So again, that's a lot of variations of options of bosses and enemies that you can put into this game. So the chances of me fighting the same thing should be very low, if not zero. If just in a certain amount of hours, you know what I mean, of repeatedly going through sessions.
During the fight, you can chop off its centipede limbs, but this forms an additional hazard as the severed limb keeps fighting. This is perfect for a group battle. Also, in case you're curious, its moveset seemed to modify from Dark Souls, so it wasn't like FromSoft just ported the boss into Elden Ring without making changes. I don't know exactly what those changes were, but I could tell that it felt different than Dark Souls. Another modified nighttime boss we encountered was Morgott. He was mostly similar to his appearance in Elden Ring, but he had a few new moves, including this insane AoE blood slash that would hit the whole group and nearly one-shot us. He also had new dagger throwing combos, and just seemed more aggressive overall. If FromSoft is going to rely on reusing bosses, I appreciate that these changes make it feel new-ish and suited for co-op. It's a shame they didn't seem to make any meaningful changes to the demi-human boss fight, but oh well. Anyway, after completing the fight, you get the message Night Repulsed. The boss also drops a purple soul, and upon interacting with it, you get a choice between 3 different upgrades for your character. This is basically how it works when killing mini-bosses too, but the upgrade from this main boss is more substantial. Sometimes these upgrades operate purely in the background, like extra spell duration, but my group occasionally encountered some more interesting upgrades. One time, one of my teammates got an upgrade that created lightning bolts whenever he dodged. Another one he found cast fireballs whenever he walked. And I do mean walked. Like, slightly tilting the left stick was the only way to trigger it. While the walking one wasn't super useful, both of these upgrades were cool because they weren't just background percentage buffs to stats. They were noticeable abilities that had the potential to shift our playstyle, at least a little bit. After everyone chooses an upgrade, fog rolls in and the Ring of Fire fully recedes. From there, Day 2 begins, and you get to continue exploring the map to get stronger before Night 2. Worth noting is that enemies and bosses defeated during Day 1 don't respawn, so it's a good idea to keep track of where you've already been. So yeah, the gameplay loop you've seen repeats for Day 2. And if you survive the Night 2 boss, you're immediately taken to the Night Lord on Day 3. As such, Day 3 consists of just this boss fight with no exploration phase. You progress to Day 3 by walking along a pathway to a door that reminds me a lot of the area and door at the end of Shadow of the Erdtree. The Night Lord of the demo was Gladius, a 3-headed dog monster that swings around a giant sword on a chain. This guy is no joke. Also, for those of you who haven't played all the Soulsborne games, this is in fact the first boss that's completely unique to Nightreign, and I suspect the other Night Lords will be completely new as well. This guy also has a pretty devastating grab attack, so I recommend not getting hit by it. During the fight, one of
See, this is my thing. Why not, right? Just create a whole map based around this theme, around this boss right here. Just create a map. Like, this is level 1. Do chapters of this, just like Elden Ring. Just do a storyline of this. This is the first world. The first world is this. It's like hell, and you're working your way from hell up to the actual surface or something like that. You know what I mean? Like the first level is like a lava volcano world. All the enemies are like fire based, or it's just like the theme. Like there's dogs, things that replicate or are synonymous with this creature in
all your
general.
teammates goes
Like
down.
it's knights with like blades that swing. It's like stuff that it's enemies that are slowly progressing and preparing you for this battle right here. You know what I mean? And then the next day or the next chapter, it does it all over again. The whole map is leading up to another boss. That the whole map is catered to prepare you for that boss at the end, rather than have it feel like I'm playing Elden Ring and then you're pretty much just waiting to get to Day 3 so you can fight a new boss, so that the game actually feels different. To me, until this point, this is the only time where the game actually felt like fresh and engaging right here. Yes, there are some points where the spell casting where like you could have like fire, ice, fire, and like it would obviously create a different type of spell, but that those aspects are also in the base game in Elden Ring as well. Like if you pair certain spells and certain passes with another, it does a certain type of effect either to you or to the it's either offensive passive or defensive passive or defensive or offensive attack. You know what I mean? Uh, so I don't this until it got to this part. This was the only thing that I just felt like we were watching Elden Ring and you were just summoning a friend to play with you, and it's not a bad thing, but it's like the loop that he was just mentioning. Like the loop. I feel like until it got to this point, it was a loop. The whole game just felt like a loop as far as the actual gameplay until it got to this point.
And here they showcase the ability to revive teammates with ranged weapons like bows. This is surprisingly useful, and it might be worth holding on to a ranged weapon just for situations like this. Speaking of ranged weapons, you don't have to worry about ammo in this game. It's unlimited. Around the halfway point, the boss explodes into 3 fireballs, and then reforms as 3 separate dogs. This is probably the toughest part of the fight, and I think the best strategy is to try to take on each of them one by one. But when I talked to Vadi after the event, he told me he just ran away until they reformed into one body, so that might be an even better strat, even if it's boring. Either way, this is Nightreign's best example so far of a boss designed for 3 people, and I hope the rest of the Night Lords have similar co-op mechanics. And then win or lose, that's the
my point exactly. Like this whole fight right here. This boss was catered to this whole co-op 2-3 friend battle. Why didn't you just make the whole game like that? Because honestly, most of the stuff that they fought, you could do that by yourself because it's basically like the base game Elden Ring already. Until they got to this point, you could have just played all that by yourself. The knights, the golems, the demons, like all that could have been fought by yourself. Like those low HPs, like 2-hit enemies. That's all stuff we've already done in Elden Ring and Shadow of the Erdtree, in Dark Souls, in Demon Souls. Like we've already done that. This is the first boss, like he said, where it felt like it was specifically catered, where you would need this co-op aspect, this whole Nightreign theme of playing with friends. This is the first time where it felt like this was catered to that. So like, why not make the whole game feel like that? I'm not saying you don't have it. I don't know if that's easier said than done, but you made this. Like I feel like the whole theme of this game should feel like you have to have a buddy. You know what I mean? There shouldn't be no part of this game where you feel like you can solo this. And I'm pretty sure we're going to see people soloing this. Like you're going to see Let Me Solo playing this whole expansion by himself and beasting in it. Like there's going to be people doing a no-hit freaking solo run of this soon as it come out.
The end of the run. Okay, that's all the footage I got, but there are still a few things they didn't include footage of that I think are worth mentioning. First, you can find spectral merchants across the map. Merchants sell a variety of consumables and weapons, but given how important leveling is, we often didn't have enough runes to spare. Like, for example, they would sometimes sell a legendary weapon for 40,000 runes, which, for this game, is quite a bit. They also seem to always sell a pouch that gives you 1 extra consumable slot for the rest of the run. Next to each merchant is an anvil, which you can use to upgrade your weapons. To upgrade a weapon, you need to find a smithing stone of the corresponding rarity, and then upon using it, it levels up your weapon to the next tier. So for example, a blue weapon would turn into a purple weapon. This also means that it's technically possible to level up a white weapon all the way to orange. I don't think the weapon itself changes during this upgrade process, aside from just getting extra damage. Also worth noting is that non-combat consumables like smithing stones or stone sword keys take up inventory space, so they might get in the way of all those fire bombs you want to carry. When exploring, you can find plants like rowa fruit scattered around sometimes. In Elden Ring, this is a crafting material, but that's not a thing in Nightreign, so instead they just restore a bit of health right when you pick them up. There are similar blue plants that restore FP too. There are also mage towers just like Elden Ring. You know the ones with the little puzzles where you gotta find the spectral turtles? Those are here too. Though when we found one, we kind of just hit the statue at the front and it opened up immediately. So it's unclear to me if there's more to unlocking them in the full game. But yeah, they have loot inside. Another thing you can sometimes find is a glowing red body on the ground, which is the location that someone else failed to run. If you interact with the body, some loot pops out, and I assume it corresponds with whatever weapons they had at the time they died. Sometimes you'll come across weird hazards during your runs. One time, my group found a big purple bubble floating across the sky. When we approached it, a swarm of giant ants poured out. I don't totally remember how this played out, but I think we got a mini boss reward after defeating them. You can also get invaded by bosses sometimes. This sadly didn't happen to my group, but I was talking with the others who had Margit invade them out of nowhere. What's cool about this is that can happen at inconvenient times, like when you're fighting a big group of enemies or another boss. Do you deal with it? Do you run away? Do you reposition to a better location? All these are interesting questions that result in some fun emergent gameplay. Stuff like this has the potential to be the defining moment of a run, where things go off the rails in a fun and memorable way. In theory, this is one of my favorite features in the whole game. I could be wrong, but I don't think there's a maximum range for receiving runes from killed enemies. You can see an example of this in the first clip of the Duchess, where she receives runes from her teammates killing enemies all the way over at the fort. This is interesting to me because it leaves the door open for strategies where you might want to split up. Like, imagine splitting up and clearing 3 camps at the same time. That might be faster than doing it together. However, one reason not to do this is because of how shared rewards for mini-bosses work. Killing a mini-boss gives each player their own reward, but only if they approach the purple soul that it leaves behind. We also found a reinforced chest, which functioned in a similar way and let each player claim a reward from it separately. Another tip, normally when you get downed, your teammates only have 15 seconds to revive you, but this timer is removed during the main nighttime boss fights. Along with this, in case it wasn't obvious, if everyone dies here, the run is over as opposed to simply losing a level. Let's go over some details from the hub area too. Just like Elden Ring, the round table hold is the hub. To begin a run, you approach the table and select the Night Lord you want to hunt. It's vaguely similar to selecting a monster to hunt in Monster Hunter. The game then immediately puts you into matchmaking to find a group to play with, but you can also use passwords just like Elden Ring to play with friends. The hub is also populated by all of the playable characters, minus whatever
Low-key like doing an Elden Ring
they all
horde
just
run.
stand around and say hello in the demo.
And then
but
you
I'm
fight like
guessing the
a
full
big
game will have
monster
them
at the
give you bits of their
end.
story
And then once
in a
that's
similar
over,
fashion
you
in
just doing
Hades.
it over
There's
and
also
over
a
and over.
sparring ground area and an outside area connected to the round table hold. Here you can test out every weapon in the game and set your
Because it's only 3 days, and once you beat the 3rd day boss, that's it. Again, I'm wondering if when this full game comes out, are they doing like, is it still going to be that 3-day loop? Is the map going to look different, or is this the only map? Or if you do defeat that on the 3rd day, does it restart and then you'll land another area that you haven't cleared yet, and then you'll just do that? Because I feel like how quickly I feel like you could probably beat this game and damn near like a day or two with your buddies. Like you could clear this map in like a day or two. Like it's people who have played Elden Ring and cleared the whole map in like 2-3 days. Like so it's like if you got 3 people with you, if you do that loop, how many days in the game is it gonna take for you? How many runs is it gonna take for you to just clear this whole map? The map doesn't look that big. It's not big as the base game, clearly. It's a decent size for this, but how quickly can this game be finished, essentially? Especially with 3 people. My biggest concern with this is just the loop. Like, now granted, I'm not gonna get this, but that doesn't mean I don't see like the potential of like people buying this. You know what I mean? This obviously it has its goods and its bads. I just like, even if I wanted to get this, my whole concern would be that loop. How fast is that mental like exhaustion of like, I feel like we're doing the same thing until we get to that 3rd day of fighting just that in level boss. You know what I mean?
character level from 1 to 15, which I assume is the max. This is neat, and I took advantage of this during my play session to test out how damage scaling worked. So stats like strength and dexterity are hidden. Like I genuinely couldn't find a stat screen that showed them, and you can't manually raise them when leveling up, but they do still exist, and different weapons scale with different stats just like Elden Ring. To test this, I spawned in a legendary greatsword with a C scaling in strength, and made my character level 15. On Wilder, the strength dex guy, a two-handed light attack dealt 348 damage. On the Recluse, the intelligence character, it only dealt 191. The Duchess also dealt 191, and the Guardian dealt 299. So what this means is that even though you're free to use any weapon you find during a run, you still probably want to stick to your character's archetype, or else you'll have to deal with a damage penalty. I have mixed feelings about this, and at the very least I don't think it should be so hidden, but it is important to know so that you can be more effective during a run. The last main component of the hub is the relic altar. Here you can equip relics between runs, and each of these gives you some sort of bonus or new ability. You can equip up to 3 per character, but they're color-coded, and the relic slots are color-coded too. For example, one character might have 2 red slots and 1 blue slot, and that means you're only allowed to equip 2 red relics and 1 blue relic. I believe there's 3 or 4 different relic colors.
Okay, I think we got the gist. In conclusion, I see the goods, I see the bads. I like I said, I just the loop of this. I feel like one thing that would make this game have a very good replay value and then would keep people's attention. Like I said, if you have these levels designed specifically for this whole co-op team-based feel, even the bosses, even the regular enemies, like do what Shadow the Erdtree did. Like they turned up the challenge and the difficulty, what you need to even fight. Like you needing those those Erdtree fragments, you needing those to fight these enemies because they hit harder and do more damage. So you can't just go in there with your regular build. You can, but you're probably not gonna. You might lose some brain cells, But I feel like what would keep our attention and could keep this game lasting until like Christmas and even beyond that is if, like I said, you make this game built around that whole co-op team-based feel with the regular enemies, the mid-level, the mini bosses, and the major end-game third day boss. But you do chapters, you do levels, you do level one is this map, level two, and you keep going, and wherever you end up dying at, that's how far you got. It's almost like a wave sense, but it's not, because at the same time you don't just start back at zero. Like as you go through the game, you can, if you get to a certain point or if you defeat a certain, you get like you can buy like a life sake rune or something like that, to where if you do die, you don't restart. You know what I mean? So it's like you have checkpoints on each once you defeat one chapter, whatever chapter you die at, that's just the chapter you keep restarting. You don't restart from the whole game over. So it's not like a wave simulation of like a Left 4 Dead or something like a zombie, or like zombies in COD, to where however far you got, if you die, you just start from zero. No, with this, you create levels, you do like 10, 15 levels designed around this mode, the end game boss like they have on this day three concept, but you create 15 maps, mini maps. You keep that circle closing in. You have mini bosses, regular bosses. Again, this would take a long time. Obviously, we wouldn't get this now, but it's okay. Great things take time. You create these maps, these environments, the enemies, the mini bosses, the end game, the end of the map chapter boss, and you keep doing that. And then if you die, you just restart that level, and you see how far you could go, and you do the first expansion, or the first like installment is like 10 to 15 chapters, and then after like 3 to 5 months, you add in five more. 3 to 5 more months, you add in five more, and you can literally just keep doing this like Fortnite does with adding in expansions of a map, or adding in a new weapon, or a new abilities. Like you could keep this going for years. Like this could literally turn into Elden Ring Fortnite if they do it like that. Like keep creating onto these maps, or create like a base map, but the map has to be freaking huge. Like it has to be like two times the size of the base game. Like you have to combine the base game map with the Shadow of the Erdtree map, with a whole nother map, a whole underground map, a whole aerial map. Like you have to create these worlds within this one map, like the base game has, to where you could go down a tunnel and it's a whole nother world in that, like Moog's area, or like the Halleck Tree area with Melania. Like you have to create these mini worlds within this map, because like I said, I don't know how big this map is, but it doesn't look that crazy, and the time frame of how quickly you beat this might not be that long. But they could literally treat this like Fortnite, with constantly being able to add content and add weapons and builds and enemies to this, if they just create these levels, these chapters centered around this co-op theme, and keep creating these co-op like centered focused bosses, where you need a friend to fight this. You need help fight. You cannot do this alone. And that needs to be the basis of this whole game. You need your friends in this. You cannot solo this. I don't care how good you evade what, you have to play this with friends. So everything is designed to where you play this with friends. Now, you can get lucky and play this by yourself. You can, but the chances of you doing this by yourself are 10% to zero. Like it's 0 to 10% chances of you being able to do this by yourself. It's that hard. They have to do it in the way Shadow of the Erdtree did, to where everything is pumped. Everything is leveled up. You cannot do this. You cannot play this game like you play Elden Ring. And that's what my biggest takeaway of like this. You can play this game like you play Elden Ring. And I don't like that. I like it and I don't like it. Like I want to feel like it's a new experience, a new flow. You know what I mean? I don't want to feel that loop. So I feel like if they do that, this game again can last for years. constantly adding maps, constantly adding bosses, constantly adding little mini little trials or whatever. So Elden Ring, Nightreign, are you getting it? You excited about it? You interested? You liking it? You loving it? You hating it? Debating it? Drop a comment down below. Appreciate everybody for watching. Oh, so Sunny, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.